So more and more we've been kind of reaching out to the community and doing more networking than we even did before because real estate's been recovering so incredibly. And the more groups I get involved with and the more people that I meet, I mean, real estate is kind of one of those things that becomes an addiction, which I didn't really expect. I mean, I knew it was lucrative and I knew it was something that I really liked. I've always been very interested. I was one of those kids who thought he'd be an architect when he was younger. Um, but I didn't expect it to become so consuming that, it's all I wanted to talk about. But that's what happens. So, as a result of that, everywhere I go, more and more, when I am talking about real estate, people are constantly asking, all right, well, how do I get involved? How do I, learn? What do I learn? What's the book tree? What's the thing to do? I want to, be an agent. I want to be an investor. Whatever it is that they want to do. Um, that same question keeps popping up. Like, well, I don't really know anything about it, or I've looked it up on the internet, but so much stuff. I don't know what's a scam and what isn't. And that's all legit. Everybody I think on earth at some point, whether or not they sat down and watched it, they have at least glossed past Carlton Sheets' video late night, while they're up doing whatever it is they do late at night. And there's a squirrely guy sitting on a Lamborghini covered in supermodels. Everybody's seen that or something similar to it, flashing dollar bills, hundreds at people, and got a big shiny watch on, and like, oh yeah, I want to have money like that. You might not want to do what he does, but I'm pretty sure he does something in real estate. It's kind of this catch-all of a way to make money, even though people don't necessarily know the particular variables that go into it. So when I am confronted with that question, the fastest way to kind of get a feel for what it means to be either an investor. Specifically, I'm kind of talking more about investor. I don't get as many people that want to be an agent, although that's starting to become more and more people are asking about being an agent because they know, again, there is money in it. I mean, there's very few things you can do to make the kind of money you can make as a real estate agent, with the minimal amount of mandatory training. And I say that because I've heard a lot of people say, oh, real estate agent, you can make $1 million with no college education. And strictly speaking, that's true because, yeah, that test that they make you pass to get your license, at least in Michigan, is not really a killer. I mean, it's a 40-hour course, and the test itself is relatively simple, but if people think that test has anything to do with selling real estate or that anything to do with the education that you need to make any real money at selling real estate, then there is an utter delusion going through their minds because I see the turnover in real estate as an agent is massive. I mean, I would say for every 10 people that I meet that come through the doors at my brokerage in Royal Oak, which is the Keller Williams in Royal Oak, one of them will do a deal. And, out of every 10 that end up doing a deal, one of those 10 will be in the business in 3 years or will really, because, I mean, it's a hard job. People don't realize it and people make fun of it or whatever, but the education begins when you get your license. That's not all you need to get into real estate. That is all you need to get to the starting gate of real estate. And from there, depending on what company you pick, everybody's got their own Kool-Aid they want you to drink. And I've been a Keller Williams guy ever since I got my license, so I don't really have I don't have enough experience with other brokerages to tell you whose Kool-Aid is the best, and I'm not even going to get into that pissing match. I've been very comfortable with Keller Williams education materials. I mean, they have got a ton of stuff. They've got classes. I've been to more classes than anybody I know that. And I went to college, so this wasn't even it's not a pissing match between college and do-it-yourselfers. It's just sheer pay for performance, and one of those components that's required, if you want to get paid real well, you have to continually improve your own performance, and that could really only be done with proactive education. It's just not the kind of education that has been accredited through some state mechanism. It's the kind of education that's been accredited through functionality in the real world. So, Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to make a huge diatribe about being an agent, but if you do want to get involved in selling real estate, again, you can contact me and I'll tell you the next steps. I'm licensed in Michigan, but I'm with Keller Williams, and they are a international brokerage. So no matter where you're at, I can point you in the right direction of who you need to talk to get involved. But in America, you pass a test, you get into your broker starts to train you. In theory, a lot of them don't, but mine did. Um, and then you start working. You start generating your opportunities and your income. So anyway, that's all I'll say about actually selling real estate. Most people that I talk to are more when they bring it up, they're more interested in the investment side. Um, a lot of that comes from shows. I mean, I won't even name them. You know them. There's all the home and garden shows where there's people flipping houses. There's listings that have 16 swimming pools and they're 40,000 square feet, and they sex it up real good. It's like it's television does, sexes everything up. I mean, they got shows of people catching crabs and cutting logs down, and somehow it's glamorous. I'm not sure how they do it. Some magic that's in the camera that must shoot like eye heroin out at people and make everything like, oh, this is great. So be under no delusions that real estate investing is not as sexy as it might look on some of those shows, nor is it as easy, nor is it as fast or as guaranteed. But I will also say that it is pretty close, probably a lot closer than catching king crabs on a ship is. There are so many different ways to get involved as an investor that it really is impossible to even just like write them all down all at once. Because if you saw them, you'd have so many questions about, all right, well, if I'm buying notes, what does that mean? Like there's so many different chunks of things that you can do, niches that you can fill in the investment world that, you're just going to have to get in somewhere and start chewing, because there's no point in me giving you 3 pizzas to eat when you just need to take a bite out of a slice to know what pizza tastes like. And that's what I try to do when people tell me, hey, how do I get involved? How do I start? The fastest, most direct way to at least get some level of knowledge going on is start along the path. It's obviously always going to be to read. I'm a reading guy. I've always loved to read, and I would suggest if you're not a reader that you give it a shot and embrace it at least for a handful of books. You might not need to read forever, but there's some things that you're going to have to sit down and take a look through. One of my first books, and again, this is, the Kool-Aid that Keller Williams throws out, is The Millionaire Real Estate Agent is part of one of the systems that we have here. And again, my goal is to not sell these things. I'm not trying to, milk you out of capital for books, but I'm just saying what I saw was this was a great starting basis to understand kind of the model and the things that you should be tracking and keeping track of and knowing about. And they have a whole collection of books. They have another one called Flip, which is obviously about flipping houses. They have a newer one they released called Hold, which is about how to hold property long term and collect cash flow off the rent. There's a million books. Another huge one is Rich Dad Poor Dad. A lot of people find it really easy to read, and it's pretty paradigm shifting if you haven't already been thinking about investments in the terms that Kiyosaki puts it in. But Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki is a huge one for a lot of people, and it is a good read. It's written basically like a fiction. But it isn't. It may be, it may not be. I don't know. If he really had a rich dad, he really had a poor dad. I don't know. I don't care. All I know is that it was a really good book for me to read. Although, in truth, actually, that book, I didn't read that one. It was an audiobook I listened to, which is another good option if you don't necessarily want to sit down and read a book. You download most of this stuff. Or you go to Amazon and download it. I'm not advocating piracy. Either way, you get a hold of a copy of it and get it on CD, get an MP3 of it off iTunes or wherever, and just listen to the audiobook and you make your car. Was it Jim Rohn? See the one who said you make your car into a library. But that's a great opportunity. I mean, I constantly have stuff on my phone. I have probably 40 books on my phone right now, and I just, every time I'm in the car, that's mostly what I do now. I used to be music all the time. Now I'm just feeding my head, and it's really it's given me a lot of good insights that I wouldn't have had any other way. So that's the first step, is self-education. Self-education. That was Jim Rohn. I think it was Jim Rohn. Uh, Formal education will get you a job, will make you a living. Uh, Self-education will make you a fortune. And that's what I want, and I'm pretty sure that's what most people want, is financial independence. They want a fortune. They don't want a little bit. You want a lot. Um, so that self-education is pretty key to start with. Outside of that, the next step is to meet other people, like-minded people, and to start networking and getting involved with others. And killer way to do that is what we call RIAs. REIA, which stands for Real Estate Investor Association. Depending on where you are geographically, you may have more or less of these. I am in Oakland County, Michigan, which is just directly north of Detroit. And I'm involved with three RIAs very actively. One is the Michigan RIA, the MREIA. Michigan RIA. I'll put a link somewhere on this page for this when I publish it. But that is a group run by Wendy Patton, who actually is in this Millionaire Real Estate Investor book. She's one of the case studies. She is a Keller Williams person herself. She runs boot camps on lease options, and she's a personal friend of mine. And Wendy's awesome. She was one of the first people I met when I moved to Keller Williams in Royal Oak from the Troy office. And, we went out down the block to Oak City Grill over here, and we had some drinks, and she was a blast. She had actually just come from, this is a handful of years ago when you could get houses for next to nothing. She was over in East Point, which is a couple miles, probably about 20 miles east of here, and she had just bought, I think, 2 or 3 houses on her credit card. They were $5,000 a piece, and she's going to turn around and rent them out. But Wendy's awesome. But I met her, even though I met her separately, she invited me to the RIA, and now I engage with her in a couple different ways, So, that was really awesome. But I wouldn't have really, I started that relationship outside of the RIA, but it's solidified once I went there, Then another one over here is Oakland RIA, which is mostly Oakland County, lower Oakland County. And then there's another one, Renegade Detroit Investors, which is run by a guy, Jeremy Burgess, and he's awesome. Honestly, they're all different. Every one of these groups has different vibes. So like the Michigan RIA group is, I think, the largest, and usually the general format of a RIA is there will be a informal hangout where everybody kind of meet and greets and talks and schmoozes with each other, figures out who does what, because there's a pretty diverse group. There's going to be some private money lenders there. There's going to be some insurance guys there. There's going to be some real estate agents there. There's going to be some investors there who flip. There's going to be some wholesalers, which is another video, but basically bird dogs who find deals. There's going to be a ton of different people there, and you basically just meet and hang out. There's usually some food or maybe a dinner that you go to. Typically, you can become a member. I'm a year member of all three of those, but some people just go for 1 or 2. So you just pay for the meeting. It could be $20 for the night or whatever. So then after the networking, they'll usually have a speaker, 1 or 2 speakers that talk on a particular topic, and they'll usually announce what the topic is ahead of time, so you kind of know if it's something you're interested in. Then they'll, have another networking section. They have some vendors that you can usually talk to see if you can get some deals or whatever. Long story short, they're just communities, but they're communities that are relatively small of people that are doing exactly what you want to get into. It's a really good way to gauge whether or not you're going to fit in with those kind of people if it seems like your community, because this is definitely a people business, and you will be surprised how few people are really involved in this industry once you start to get involved with it yourself. Realistically, there are so few people that are coming to some of these things that you'd figure there'd be thousands and thousands of people showing up. Like, for example, there are the short sales, the sheriff sales, not short sales, I'm sorry, the sheriff sales for Oakland County, they happen weekly. And when you go to these things, these sheriff sales, um, there's the same dozen or 2 dozen people that show up. It's in a little tiny room that's no bigger than a classroom, cinder block room. It looks just like, any school that, at least the school I went to. And it's just a handful of people, and there's a table that the sheriff is sitting at, and he reads off the properties, and there's a handful of people that bid. It's not a huge group, and it's the same people that show up all the time. So, I mean, your community may be different. If you're in Southern California or you're in Manhattan, this probably isn't going to apply to you the same way. But, I mean, where I'm at in Oakland County, Michigan, this is the way it is. And once you start to meet these people, they become the network that you can play ball with. I mean, some of these people I have now joint ventured with on other projects. Some of these people I have just sold deals to that I, got a hold of, and then I couldn't do anything with it, or I was too involved in other things and I just sold it outright. There's a million things to do once you're in the network, but you do have to get involved with it, and the RIAs are a great way to do that. So, there are other, on top of the RIAs, usually the RIAs will be, a lot of times they'll sell some other guru's package or boot camp or some other things like that. And there is definitely, I've heard, some benefit. I haven't spent personally a ton of money on going to boot camps or like heavily specialized courses where it might be, $1,000 to learn everything about, some type of financing or whatever. I haven't done one of those. However, there are people who have and gotten good returns out of them. I guess it's just a function of what your learning style is. But either way, I definitely advise you to find a RIA if you can and get involved with it. That'll really expand your opportunity for meeting people who are trying to do the same things that you are. If you don't have any of those options open to you, there are websites that you can get involved with. My favorite, I know there are others, but really the only one that I've been using is Bigger Pockets. And if you've gotten involved at all with real estate investing online, you probably heard of Bigger Pockets at least once, because it has become a really great community. It's massive. There are a ton of people there from all over the world. I get a lot of people calling me from either coast of America because Detroit's a hot topic right now as far as investment goes. There's a lot of people who have heard about the mythical $500 house, they could buy in Detroit. And, I don't work specifically in the city dealing with a lot of $1,000 houses, but I do work in the north suburbs, and there's still a ton of opportunity up outside of the city too. So I meet people on the coast. I'm from the East Coast myself originally, so I get a lot of rapport going with guys from the East Coast. Get a lot of Californian investors that I keep abreast of what's going on up here. We're getting a ton of international interest right now. A lot of Chinese investment, Indian investment from the emerging Asian markets and stuff like that. And I think it's awesome. I'm personally very excited to be able to make those kind of relationships outside of the borders of just the states. Because real estate is an international game. It is, once you start, once you learn the rules that work here, change some of the statistics, and those rules work in other countries too. And I personally look forward to investing in other countries in Asia and working with investors there to have them invest here. So either way, that community is awesome. And Bigger Pockets also, on top of just being a community, they have a huge library of resources. They have got resources. They've got topics. They've got articles written on topics, all kinds of topics. I've written articles on there. It's a killer blog. They've got spreadsheets. They've got guys, Josh Dorkin and Brandon Turner have a podcast. They run it. I don't know them super well, but I've emailed with them a couple times, and they're really helpful guys. I think one is Seattle and one's Colorado. I'm not totally positive. But man, they've got a podcast. You go on iTunes and download the Bigger Pockets podcast. Download the Bigger Pockets podcast. Download the Bigger Pockets podcast, because it's awesome. I don't know how many episodes they're even up to now, but it's got to be 50, 60. They just got a ton of stuff. If they were to package all that thing, I mean, I promise you, if you go to some seminar, somebody out there has spent $25,000 going to a weekend seminar that every single thing in that seminar was covered for free on a Bigger Packets podcast. It's just the way it is. They've got just so much information that if you don't go and at least check it out once, then you're wasting your time. If you're not going to do that much, don't spend any money in real estate investing, because that's go there. It's free. Do it. If you are on Bigger Pockets, you can find me, Tommy Desmond. Search for me. I'll be your buddy. It'll be great. We'll be friends. We'll be tight. It's just check it out. It's a really good thing. There are other sites that I've heard about. I'm not even going to speculate on them because I haven't used them. But just go online, do your research. Between those three things, self-education, read books, listen to books, go to RIAs, find RIAs, get involved in the community, reach out online and start building your network that way and expanding your mind. I mean, it's really all the same stuff. The vehicle that you use to get those things delivered is not as relevant as the fact, and the fact is, educate yourself, network. That's it. That's level one. Deals kind of evolve organically after that. Once you've kind of got those foundations set up, you'll eventually find your way to your first deals. Don't get overzealous. I mean, just take it as time comes. This is not the kind of thing that you're going to decide on a Tuesday that you're going to do, and by Friday you're going to get a check. Abandon the concept. Just relinquish the idea from your mind. If you want to do that, you got to go to some other website, figure out how to, I don't know, fish for passwords on Amazon or so. I don't know. Go do something else, because this is definitely a term game. There is a longer term to this. If you plan on getting into something that over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 lifetime years is going to be very lucrative and be generally awesome, then this is the world that you should spend more time and energy on. So anyway, anybody has any questions, they can always get a hold of me, Tommy, Tommy, at DesmondRealty.com. Again, someplace on this page, there'll be a link to something that will have my phone number and contact stuff on it. I'll answer what I can. Take care.